Hello and welcome to this review of my BTC 5149. One of my friends nicknamed it Fred. I showed a BTC keyboard like this twice before, a 5130 to be precise, once in my Dome with Slider mega review and once during the HHKB video, and I was quite positive about it in both cases. Ever since those videos I've had requests for a full review on this, and here it is, a rubber dome keyboard that's actually good. This particular one was actually a donation. It's from a batch of brand new 5149s in French AZERTY layout, although I changed a bunch of the keycaps around to better reflect the UK layout. It's still got the funny French legends like échappe and entrée and ancé and ample écran 6 on it though. Now let's get it right out there. This is a rubber dome keyboard. It uses BTC Dome with Slider switches, which are a fairly sophisticated type of rubber dome switch. Unlike typical rubber dome keyboards which use a single rubber mat over a set of sensing membranes, BTC Dome with Slider keyboards use rubber dome strips over an actual PCB, and the domes are really snappy. This makes for a very tactile, snappy, quite smooth key feel with no real mushiness to it whatsoever. It's quite a nice key feel overall, really. Of course, it's not mechanical, but I'd say this is a legit keyboard. I prefer this to some mechanical switches like Cherry MX Brown, which are scratchier and much less tactile. The board itself is quite well made for a rubber dome keyboard too. There were several BTC models that had these switches, including the 5130, 5140, 5139 and 5149, and they all have a very similar build. The SIIG Mini Touch Plus also used these switches in a more space-saving layout. It's not immensely heavy, but it's not super light either, and it's sturdy enough. And it's got a proper metal back panel for good measure, as well as a PCB, of course. Simple flip-out feet, nothing really out of the ordinary here. But overall, a decent construction, especially for a rubber dome keyboard. BTC also made normal rubber dome keyboards that vaguely look like these, but without the sliders, and they're not quite as good. They could come with several different brands on them, for which BTC made the boards, often Packard Bell, like this one, or, in this case, Wise. One thing that's quite typical on BTC boards is the large escape key. Some other manufacturers like Focus also use this on some models, but it's mainly associated with BTC. The keycaps on this one are pad-printed ABS, although many other ones had lasered keys instead. The arrow keys even have the distinct yellow legends typical of Wise keyboards. The font is pretty good. It's a bit bigger on some keys like Escape and Control and Alt, so they look pretty decent. Overall, the caps are a bit cheap, but the good thing is the switches are Cherry MX mount, so you can replace them with thick double shot or POM caps if you want. They drastically changed the typing sound, by the way. This is what they normally sound like, which is a good sound, I should say. It sounds nice and thucky, quite a bit like Topra, except louder. By contrast, ABS double shots make them sound much deeper and clackier, and POM caps even deeper and clackier than that. Sounds almost like a snarl actually, quite an interesting sound. One thing I noticed is that the spacebar rattles a lot while you type. So it's probably best to put some lube on it just to shut it up. I'd call this keyboard essentially the poor man's Topra. The key feel isn't quite as refined as Topra, but apart from that I think it stands head and shoulders above other rubber dome keyboards. The main difference of course is the price. Topra boards cost an enormous amount of money, whereas these boards can be found lying around pretty commonly and they're dirt fucking cheap. So, as an overall conclusion, I'd say this board, as well as other BTC Dome with Slider keyboards, have two very distinct purposes. First, as a kind of test ride for Topra. If you don't want to shell out immediately for a real Topra board, see if you can snag one of these from somewhere and give it a go. If you like it, you'll probably like Topra a lot too. If not, you might want to give Topra a miss, because they're not that dissimilar actually. Second, for those who like Topra, but for who Topra boards don't give what they want, for example, Cherry MX mount, non-ANSI language forms, or a full-size layout, the latter two of which are not that easy to get hold of with Topra boards. Of course, I should reiterate that these switches are really good rubber domes, but they're still rubber domes. I like them, I think they're quite nice, but don't go around spending a serious amount of money on these. Part of the point of these boards is that they are cheap, and while they're good for such cheap boards, if you'd shell out for them, you'd have to compare them to really serious players on the mechanical market. Like, for example, Orange Alps, and quite frankly, they don't measure up to that level. Anyway, that's it for this review. I hope you liked it. Thank you for watching, and following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.